Yes, you are doing amazing. I thought you needed me to test it. I'm up here playing around. Yes, we can start. Okay, welcome everyone. We are happy to have our media friends here and later members of the public. My entire subcommittee team for the Dream Team Return to Learn. And what we wanted to do is give you a follow-up to what we presented to the school board last night for our Return to Learn plan for Lynchburg City Schools students. So first, let me say to my students and my family and on behalf of everybody here, we miss you. I cannot stress enough that as superintendent and as educational leaders, we want our students back. We miss you. We miss engaging with you. We miss watching you learn, grow, develop, that inquisitive nature, all those questions you asked us, and all that socialization and just engagement and interaction that we had with you. So as we develop our plan, please know that the first part of our plan is all about our students and missing them and needing them to come back to our educational facility. Second, we are one big Lynchburg City School family. So in addition to our students, we also have our wonderful, talented staff. And as you know, this COVID-19 virus has caused some concern, not only in Lynchburg, Lynchburg City Schools, Lynchburg, but all across the world. And as school superintendent, I need to take care of my entire family. So what we are proposing, we're looking at what's best for our students, what's best for our staff who will be the caregivers of our students during the school day, and what's best for our families. And just recognizing that as I say, what's best, there is no easy answer or easy solution to this that is fitting for everyone. So as a school division, we are making the best decisions that we can in a time where we have the information that is available to us right now. We recognize that information changes daily, if not hourly. There is so much that we still don't know about this virus that we're learning every day. But the one thing that I know that we all agree on is that kids need to be in school. And that is our number one thing. So we are proposing to do it safely. We're proposing to do it with reflection and looking at what happens as we go back to return to learn. So last night I presented our plan, which has our students coming back to school on August 24th in 2 separate waves. Our pre-K to 5 students will come back to school 2 days a week. Tuesday and Wednesday will be one cohort, or about half of the students, pre-K to 5. And then Thursday and Friday will be the other half of the students, pre-K to 5, physically in the building. And on the off days, students will either be at home or at attending other off-site childcare facilities or learning centers where they can continue to engage in meaningful learning during the off time that they are not physically in the building. And that will begin on August 24th. On August 24th, our 6th through 12th grade students will start within a totally online program for those first 2 weeks. And then on September 8th, those are our tentative dates that we think will be into phase 3, we will bring our 6th through 12th grade students back 2 days a week, same plan, Tuesdays and Wednesdays for one cohort, and Thursdays and Fridays for the second cohort. And they also will either attend an off-site learning facility or stay at home while they continue with this blended hybrid model of learning during that time. What we propose to do as we ease back into a 50% sort of capacity is evaluate and make sure that we're keeping our students safe. And I know there is a lot of data about students and whether or not they can get COVID, they have low incidence of COVID, whether they can transmit it to others, and students are part of our family. We also need to keep our staff safe. And our staff are the adults who are there, whether they are the teachers, the caregivers, the nurse, the school counselors, our transportation department. They're the first lines of picking up our students and bringing them in. And we also, as an LCS family, have to recognize that many of our staff are in those categories of 65 and older. They may have some medical conditions that make them more susceptible to the COVID virus. So as we consider our plan of 2 days a week, and I know everyone would love to have 5 days a week, we really have to consider the total LCS family and looking at what is going to be safe for all parties that are involved, because a school system without teachers, without bus drivers, without nutrition workers, without school nurses, school counselors, instructional assistants, principals, assistant principals, is not going to be a very good school system for kids if the adult staff members are unable to attend. So that was a very important part of what we were doing. Also, we recognize that as parents and as we move into phase 3, that your employment is important to you, and the options for childcare during the off days might be limited, which is one of the reasons why we are really committed to finding or partnering with our local community centers and other community partners so that we have adequate spaces for our kids to be when they are not with us. And then also thinking about it from the lens of the educators, our staff members are family members too. They have children too. Many of them live in Lynchburg City, some of them live in other counties, and it would be impossible for them to attend work if they themselves do not have adequate childcare for their own children. So that is something else that we took into consideration as we developed our plan. And probably one of the most important factors that contributed to our 2-day-a-week plan is transportation. So the CDC guidelines say that we should be 6 feet apart, safe. There was new guidance released by AAP and the World Health Organization that said you could be 3 feet apart with face coverings. I have to stress the with face coverings that came out this week. And when you look at a school bus, if you're really 6 feet apart on a school bus, you're only transporting about 8 to 10 kids on a school bus. And that would mean that we would be transporting kids all day long, and who knows what a school day would look like if we tried to just do that plan. So part of what we would like to do, and I mentioned this last night at the board meeting, is get one child per seat with a mandatory mask so that if parents need to use the bus transportation, we absolutely want to provide that for them, but we also want to keep our students safe, our drivers safe, and our bus assistants safe. So we are going to require that students who ride the bus wear the mask for the duration that they're on the bus. We will have additional masks if parents don't have them as well. So that is the big overall structure of our plan. I will say from an academic point of view, we had lots of committees that were committed to educating the entire child. So our program is looking at more than just what's tested, SOLs, more than just social studies, world language. We really, really value a child's interaction in the arts. Health and PE is going to be very, very important that kids get enough exercise and those endorphins. We want to make sure that we have CTE options available for our kids. And that's kind of tricky because some of those courses require social closeness. Some of those courses require that kids are up close and personal, but I have a dynamic staff that are working on ways to make those experiences possible. And then extracurricular activities and athletics was also something that makes the school experience the total experience. And while I can't say when football is going to start, I will say I have a dynamic team that is working on how do we have those experiences for students to still participate in extracurricular activities and athletics in a safe manner that keeps the students safe, the coaches and the advisors safe as well. So that is the basis for our plan. Our word is flexible, and we have to absolutely be flexible. So what we start with, and I know parents, one of your concerns are if it's 2 days a week, is it going to be 2 days a week all year long? We want to be flexible with that. So as we evaluate what happens once we open school and the weeks following once we open school, the new information that we get from the medical profession, and any additional information that will help us increase the face-to-face time that we have with our children, we are certainly open to looking at that and adjusting our plan. So I do want everybody to understand that we need to start somewhere. We need to start with getting our kids back, and then we can move forward with getting them back with increased frequency as it becomes safe. So that's the big overall picture of the plan. What I would like to do is talk a little bit about how did we get here? This was not a decision that I, as superintendent, unilaterally made. I had a team of folks, over 60 people who participated on the DREAM team, everything from central office personnel, assistant principals, principals, supervisors, teachers, athletic trainers. We had nurses participate on that committee, on that DREAM team, and each DREAM team member was on a subcommittee. We had 9 subcommittees and their responsibilities they're going to talk a little bit about once they come up. But those subcommittees also reached out to the community. We did surveys for our community, and our first one was intentional in terms of just what concerns do you have? We did not want to assume we knew all of the challenges or concerns. We wanted to hear from community members, and we had a large response telling us what many of those concerns were. We also did focus groups through Zoom for people who signed up and said, I would love to share my ideas with you in a Zoom focus group. We did one for our staff. We did one for the business in our community. We did one with the medical profession to give us some updated advice and to enlighten us on things that we might not know about. We had one for parents and caregivers, and the last one that we did this week was with students. So as best as we could, we reached out to our community, our families, our caregivers, our partners. And I will say there is a lot of positive support in this community for our children. That is one thing that I'm really pleased about, that we're moving forward. So what I would like to do at this time, so you have a better understanding of the committee work, is introduce you to some of our committee members. I have the chairpersons here with me today, and just know that each chairperson had it at anywhere from 10 to, 20, 25 people on their subcommittee, and they're going to come up and explain a little bit about what their subcommittee was charged to do. And I'm going to start with the first subcommittee, which was a big one that was responsible for organization, and that is the principal of Sheffield, Miss Lisa Lee.
Good afternoon. I am Lisa Lee, principal at Sheffield Elementary, and enjoyed the privilege of being the chair for the organizational subcommittee. This subcommittee was tasked with establishing the division school calendar and schedules for phases 1, 2, and 3 for the upcoming school year. In addition to calendar and schedules, we looked at making recommendations for transportation, technology and cybersecurity, school nutrition, and facility use. Our team worked closely with the other subcommittees that you'll hear from in the next few minutes in developing the instructional plan for LCS, and we continue to assist in creating supports for students, families, and employees. Mr. Mason?
Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew A. Mason. I'm the very proud principal of Sandusky Middle School. I am a very proud staff member of Lynchburg City Schools and the chair of the Safety and Response Subcommittee. The Safety and Response Subcommittee was tasked with establishing the division mitigation plan for phases 2 and 3 for the upcoming school year. This team has made recommendations for cleaning facilities, student, staff, and community safety protocols to, from, and in school buildings, and specific training for all staff in preparation for the fall. This team has worked closely with other subcommittees in developing the mitigation plan for LCS and continues to assist in creating support for our students, families, and employees. And now, Jen Armstrong.
Thank you, Matt. My name is Jen Armstrong. I'm the head athletic trainer at EC Glass High School, and I also am the teacher of athletic training here at EC Glass High School. The Athletics and Extracurricular Subcommittee was responsible for establishing division guidelines with guidance from the Virginia High School League. This is to ensure a safe return to all athletics and activities. The guidelines have a phased approach that move in conjunction with the state and local division phases. Preventative measures such as pre-screening, limitations on gatherings, program-specific plans, cleaning and disinfecting, as well as a requirement of physical distancing are several keys to begin a safe return. Policy and procedure training for all faculty, staff, coaches, directors, sponsors, supervising adults, and students will occur prior to the resumption of any school-based activity. The next speaker you'll hear is Artis Applin.
Thank you, Jen. I am Artis Appling, 7th grade math teacher at Sandusky Middle School and the chair of the Family Community Engagement and Communication Committee. The Engagement and Communication Subcommittee is responsible for informing families and community members of the LCS plan. We've conducted surveys as well as held focus groups with various stakeholders to capture the needs of our community. This subcommittee is also responsible for partnering with community groups and businesses to assist in implementing the LCS plan for Return to Learn. And the next speaker will be Courtney Bennett.
Good afternoon. I'm Courtney Bennett, the literacy coach at Robert S. Payne Elementary School, and also the chair of the Pre-K through 3 committee. The Pre-K through 3 committee joined with the 4th and 5th grade committee in order for the elementary school teams to be more cohesive. Our committee focused on providing instructional recommendation and guidance that will help smoothly transition our elementary students back to schools. I will explain the focus areas for our students, and Mr. Hoffman, the other chair, will go over the focus areas for the teachers. Our major focus areas for the students were new instruction and social emotional learning. The new instruction will occur this school year in all subject areas, including the core subjects, fine arts, movement education. In addition to focusing on the new instruction, there will be an emphasis on social emotional learning for all students. And Mr. Hoffman's going to speak next.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. I'm Brian Hoffman, and I am the assistant principal at Lincoln Elementary School, and I was the chair of the 4th and 5th grade instructional teams. As Ms. Bennett mentioned, we did merge our teams together and into one group to address all elementary grades, and I will explain what we focused on for staff, especially teachers and administrators. Our committee outlined what resources and professional development opportunities would be beneficial for teachers and administrators to better prepare us for hybrid learning. Our committee also emphasized the importance of planning time for teachers to work together to develop lessons and activities. Next, we have Mr. Danny Verl.
Good afternoon. I am Danny Rule, proud principal of Paul Lawrence Dunbar Middle School for Innovation and the chair for the 6th through 8th grade Teaching and Learning Subcommittee. The task of the 6th through 8th grade Teaching and Learning Subcommittee was to determine the what and the how teaching and learning would be delivered for middle school students upon our return to learn. The team members, in collaboration with grade level leaders, have provided guidance for the school division so that all 6th through 8th grade students may continue to excel in Lynchburg City Schools. The plan allows for participation in all core classes, elective classes, and your CTE classes. New learning will take place from the beginning of the year, as teachers will also cycle back and provide opportunities to fill in learning gaps that may exist. Please welcome Tracy Lipscomb.
Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Lipscomb. I am the associate principal of Heritage High School, and I am the chair of the 9th through 12th grade Teaching and Learning Subcommittee. Our team's driving principle has been the desire to move students toward meeting graduation requirements while also providing them with necessary and familiar high school opportunities and experiences. With that in mind, we're working to create a schedule that allows students to take not only their core classes, but also electives and advanced level courses, to participate in previously scheduled off-site programs, to complete CTE and certification programs, and of course, to participate in cultural arts classes and activities. Our immediate strategy after assessing student readiness is to jump out of the gate with online learning that works to seal any gaps that may have been created by the spring closure, and then to maximize in-person time for collaboration and hands-on activities as we move into a blended learning phase. And next is Dominique.
Good afternoon. I'm Dominique Foster, the Elementary Counselor Supervisor and Alternative Education. I'm also the chair for the Special Population Subcommittee. The Special Population Subcommittee was responsible for identifying students who have demonstrated a priority need for face-to-face instruction. The subcommittee made recommendations, modifications, adjustments, and enhancements that go beyond what is included in the teaching and learning grade bands. Some of the subgroups in our subcommittee included alternative education, seniors, English language learners, career technical education programs, and special education. The subcommittee focused on critical areas such as social, emotional, and mental health supports, professional development training for staff and families, and blended learning. I will now turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Crystal Edwards.
Thank you. Thank you, team, for that very descriptive analysis of what you have done. And I will tell you, the seconds that they spent up here talking about it does not compare to the hours and days that they spent working on our plan. So hopefully from what they've said, what I've shared, you see that this is a well-rounded plan in terms of offerings for our students and training for our staff, students, and families. The mitigation in terms of the health and safety parts that we want to make sure that we follow. So the work's not over. As we look at this plan and a start date of August 24th, again, parents have two options in the beginning. We're offering the blended learning plan for pre-K through 5 starting on August 24th. You may also request an online only option if you feel more comfortable as a parent or a family member or caregiver of a child that you don't feel like your child is ready to come back to the physical building, but definitely ready for the learning. We will offer an online only option for our families because we understand that a lot is still unknown about this program. Our 6th through 12th grade students will start online on August 24th and then shift to a blended model on September 8th. And again, they too can continue with an online only option if that's what parents and caregivers feel is the appropriate decision for your family. So we, again, flexible is my word. We want to go back to making sure that we offer those options. There's been a lot of questions about safety and mitigation and things that we're going to do. You heard from the safety team. We are, when we transport students on our buses, we did not talk about this, but one of the things that makes a bus time a little bit more challenging is after we pick up a cohort of kids and deliver them to their schools, we have to stop and clean the buses. So we have a mister system, an e-mister that we're going to use to clean the buses. You can imagine that being the same with shared spaces that kids use. So we really wanted to build into our schedule time for cleaning as well as time for deep cleaning. So there will be cleaning every single day, all day long. And then on Mondays, we'll have deep cleaning of our facilities and our buses as well. At this time, I want to open it up for, let me make sure I'm following, questions from the media. And if there's anything that we cannot answer at this point, we have a parking lot system. We will certainly get back to you with the appropriate answer. And I'm going to defer to my team if they feel comfortable answering a question, or of course, I will always answer any questions that you may have. Okay. And I don't know the order of the media, but we can start with Santiago, I guess.
Hi. First question is about Monday. So you said you're going to be coming on Monday. So you're also going to be online instruction on Monday?
Right.
It's going to be 4 days.
Okay, so the instruction is 4 days a week. That Monday is the day that the students have for their own self-learning, independent learning during the Mondays.
Okay. And the 2 days, well, maybe 4 days, is there still going to be some sort of
Yeah. So part of what we wanted to do, and you all know that was very important to us to make sure that our students were well fed. So the students who are attending school the 2 days a week and then they're off, we'll make sure that they get meals at home. And in order for us to count students as being Lynchburg City school students, we do have to provide that service. I know that's something that Ms. Morris and team is looking at. How do we provide that for students who may be receiving or who may want that online only option? And that one, okay. I will repeat the question. So the question was about our community partnerships and the offsite location, learning locations, and how far in the process we were in terms of having any of that solidified and ready to go. And I do my turnaround because Ms. Reeves is here.
Good afternoon. My name is Ethel Reeves, and I have been serving on the Family Engagement and Communication Subcommittee. My task was to continue to work with our community to find the community learning spaces and to work to be sure that we have those adequate spaces, internet access, and those kinds of things that will help our students. As far as finalizing the process, it has not been finalized yet. I will tell you that our goal is to, of course, work with Lynchburg Parks and Rec and some of our other centers that already work with our students like Jubilee, the YMCA. We're also going to look at some of our faith-based community organizations that have open space for us to use. We've also worked through our Business Alliance to contact some of our businesses that may have space. So finalizing that has not been done just yet, but we are working to get it done. Thank you.
Go ahead, Meg. Okay, absolutely. So one of the things that I do want to stress to my students is in the spring when COVID hit us and caught everyone off guard and we closed schools rather quickly, we had choice boards, we had a modified grading system to make sure that students had an opportunity to go back and work on third marking period grades, but we did not grade fourth marking period. And it was not mandatory that you had direct instruction from your teachers. So that first and foremost will be different for every child. So it is not optional learning, it is new learning, it is mandatory learning. That being said, for our students with special needs, and as Ms. Foster said, they worked on the special populations of students, and the at-risk student, ELL student, special education student, to make sure that we are meeting their needs, meeting their IEP, having that direct instruction. And again, if I go back to flexible being my word, if we have a child that has extensive needs, we will meet those needs for that individual family. We know what most of our special needs students or students with disabilities have IEPs, which dictate the services. And one of the first things that we're going to do, and I think Ms. Lipscomb said it, is we're going to assess you when you come back to see where are those learning gaps and where do we need to work with students. And in some cases, we may need to do a little bit more and a little bit extra. And as you saw from the spring, our Family Connect team was happy to reach out to families. We did some nighttime calls, but our children are precious to us. So we want to make sure that we are as flexible as possible in meeting their needs. And our special needs children, we want to make sure that this 2 day a week is not something that's going to stop them from progressing. Okay. So the question is, why are the high school and middle school students going all remote starting on August 24th and then having the face-to-face option about 2 weeks later on September 8th? As I said, one of the things that we want to make sure that we do is that we get it right. So this is our first opportunity to bring our kids back into our buildings. As you notice, we're all masked up practicing social distancing as adults. Now we're going to practice it with our youngest pupils. This will be our first time transporting students, and we want to make sure that we master that transportation plan. We know which students need transportation and which students, which families may be able to bring their kids in. And we also want to give our teachers time, a preparation time to make sure, particularly at the secondary level where we have a lot of specialty courses, CTE courses and things like that, that they have the time necessary to prep and prepare for those days, for that time. So they will be starting online first, and then they will be coming into brick and mortar, and part of that is built into our transportation plan and making sure that that's accurate. Okay. So the question is, what is the potential for high school secondary students to have a full online course for half a year or the whole entire year? So when we start on August 24th, we will offer that option to all students. And I think to expand on your question, one of the concerns that parents raised was, well, if I choose that option at the beginning of the year, is there a way that I can say, oh, I want to come back into the 2-day a week or whatever day a week plan it is? And we are looking for natural entry points for, if you do choose the online all virtual option, when would be an opportune time if that was not working out for you or you wanted to make another choice that you can actually come back to the 2-day a week or vice versa, go to the full online program without missing a lot of instruction. So those dates have not been finalized, but parents did raise that concern about having that flexibility, and I know the team is addressing that. Yeah, and I know that there are families that do feel that way. They don't want their children to wear face coverings, and they're concerned about, well, if I don't want my child to wear a face covering and I don't want to drive my child to school, what are my child's options? And I will say part of what we're doing initially is educating everyone. The first part of what we're doing is training for staff, students, families, community members. And I think as the medical profession continues to learn more about the virus, all of us continue to be educated. And one of the first things that I would say to families is, and I would say it for me, myself standing here, is, I may not be wearing this face covering because I'm fearful for what might happen to me. I may be wearing this face covering because I don't know who's 6 feet apart, 3 feet apart, and whether or not they are compromised, and whether or not that person suffers from asthma or any of those conditions, or do they have a frail family member with medical conditions at home? So the face masks, of the face coverings, I should say, is a protection for all of us, including as I get on the bus and I greet my favorite bus driver who has been driving the bus for 40 years. I have my mask on because he is my favorite bus driver and has been driving the bus for 40 years. And I want to make sure that I keep him safe as well. So the mask on the bus, I know this is a tough line for some families. When we're traveling on the bus, they are required. It is one of the ways we can justify sitting children, 1 seat per child, alternating aisle and window. Mhm. Take that one.
As we continue to work with our community partners, it is not our goal to tax them with additional fees. We again are working with those community partners that ideally already work with children in the community spaces. We are also going to staff those with our personnel so that that would not be a cost to any of our families.
So the question is regarding a child's ability to keep up, not fall behind, and what will LCS do to make sure that as children experience this new learning adventure, I'll call it, that they don't fall behind, and that we do our due diligence to help them. And I will say we will do everything in our power possible to really make sure that our kids aren't falling behind. I think part of making the teaching and learning, moving from a choice board to an instructional board, and moving from things that kids could do with their families and choose as options to, this is what you need as a child in 2nd grade or 4th grade or science or math as vital learning, and actually holding both our staff and our students to an accountability plan, which is similar to a grading plan and responsibility, will help that. We also want to make sure that when children are struggling, I think one of my students said it's about the relationship, and having our staff really know our kids and make sure that, we don't wait until they're failing to reach out and say, hey, how can we help you? And I also want to just say that as we look at our plan, part of it, when you look in a classroom, is going from a class of maybe 24, 25 to a class of 12. And that's going to help with the personalization with staff and students and families. And we will also have some aspects of our Family Connect team. We have a tremendous school counseling team whose part of their responsibility is to reach out to children and families and make sure that their needs are being met. I know many of my seniors were concerned about, what about the college process? What about that? Our staff is on it. They're ready to assist. Yeah. At this point, we are not able to hire additional teachers. The half-size class will be, if I go back to the plan, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you basically have a cohort of kids, half of the kids coming, and then on Thursday and Friday, the other half of the kids would be coming. So a teacher's load would be about the same in terms of total number of students. And that was something else that we didn't want to overload our teachers with, trying to do too much in person and virtual and online virtual, because they are a vital part of our family as well. So we need to make sure that we kept that class size pretty small for them. We had some conversation with the medical profession about the accuracy of the no-touch scan when you're outside waiting for the bus, and it might be temperature dependent. So on a really, really hot day, we may not get an accurate reading, or on a really, really cold day, we may not get an accurate reading. So the safest thing for us to do is do a partnership. One, we would ask our families, and families should just do this because we're in the COVID, to be checking on your children yourselves at home wherever possible. Also yourself, your family members, because one of the things that I learned is about, I think you said 25 to 40% of people who have COVID are atypical. So it's always a good idea to just showing atypical signs. It's always a good idea to check on students. We will check on them when they get to school. And we will be very careful because you can imagine if you walk through the doors, we don't want lines of students lining up. So we are looking at systems that will allow us to do that quickly. We're also stressing the need for training. And how do you handle that if I walk through and my temperature is 102? You can imagine a young child feeling, what do I do now? So again, our theme, lead with care. We want to make sure that our students feel comfortable, that we treat them with love, as we also check on their health and wellness. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I wish I could say any date was a hard date for me. There are no hard dates. There are our best estimates with the data that we have, the information that we have right now. So much of what we've seen is with the social distancing and the good PPE practices that we have in place, we've been able to mitigate the risk. And I think I said last night, we are not eliminating the risk. We are not eliminating COVID. What we're trying to do is just lower the risk or the chance to get that. So when we were looking at a 2-week period, if you can imagine, from transporting kids, the pre-K to 5 students for August 24th to September 8th, and then bringing on the second group of kids, there's 2 weeks in between that. And that gives us enough time. That's usually the incubation period and everything that they tell you to watch the quarantine. It gives us enough time to look at, we've been transporting all of our elementary students. How's it going? Are we doing well? We've been cleaning the buses in between. These are the things. Are our practices and procedures working? Do we need to do something different? So we want to make sure that we have that time to do that. And also just looking at, again, going back to secondary and being more specialized in coursework. When our teachers come back in early August, we're looking at about 3 weeks to get ready for students to come back both face-to-face and online, and our teachers needing some additional time to get ready for face-to-face. Okay, so yep, there's Jen Armstrong's going to come up because she has been phenomenal in keeping contact with what VHSL is doing and best practices with sports and activities.
So your question was in regards to when school resumes, what will that mean for competitions, am I correct? So that has not been decided yet by the VHSL. They met on June 25th, and then they decided at that point to go ahead and meet later in July and then again in August, and to assess the conditions and see where we're at. So when the schools submit the mitigation plan, the phase is not equal to the state phase. So we would enter in phase 2, which would still be VHSL guidelines phase 2, which is individual drills, conditioning, and things like that.
Yes. Yeah. So the first couple surveys, we were getting mass information from everyone just to really inform the plan. What are the concerns? What are the areas we need to look at? We knew childcare would be an area that came up. The focus groups helped us also put the plan together and look at some areas. But now we need to get specific to families. So in order for us to have a solid transportation plan, we need to know which families actually need bus transportation. So the next round of surveys, we're going to encourage and do our best to get every family to say, yes, I need bus transportation for my 5th grader, my 7th grader, my high schooler, or no, I will be able to transport my child. And for each, you can imagine, for each seat that is not needed, that will inform our plan and hopefully open it up a little bit more so that we can increase the frequency or also increase the children who have access to that. So that's going to be the first thing. The second thing is online registration is open to families to go on and update that information. And we know a lot of families put their transportation plans in maybe pre-COVID or early on when we first had it in March, not thinking that, wow, we're now at a 2-day-a-week, cohort. And if that needs to be adjusted, that we would like that information there as well. Don't know the date of the survey. My team back here is working rather quickly. I do imagine that's one of the first things that we need to get out, so it will be coming out shortly. And Cindy Babb will send out all the necessary information to make sure that families are aware. Other questions? Other questions? Okay. Is this where I ask, are there any questions from the public? Oh, we do.
know what I mean? Yes. We'll go ahead with our first question. Our first question is, will LCS be posting an updated calendar soon?
Yes, we will be updating our calendar, our school calendar for students for this current school year. We'll also be updating the employee calendars for any employees that are listening and would like that employee calendar.
How are the cohorts determined, and when do we find out which one our children are in? Can cohort A or cohort B be requested based on parents' work schedules?
So the cohorts, one of the things we tried to do with our transportation plan is do a family-friendly plan that's based on location within the Lynchburg City area, with flexibility, because we recognize that some students go to different schools, like the Go Center, Schools for Innovation. So the cohorts will be determined based on neighborhoods where you live. And what we're doing is sending all of our buses you can imagine, to the South area first to pick up students who might attend Heritage High School, Sandusky Middle School, and the elementary schools in that area. And then they would go to the north. That might be Tuesday, Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, we'd go to the other side. And if parents are assigned to a cohort, let's say I was assigned to a Tuesday, Wednesday, and I really need you to be flexible and put me in another cohort, they just need to reach out to us so that we can discuss that with them and try to work with them to see what we can do. I will say, when we met with the business community, because COVID is our community concern, not just our school concern. So we're hopeful that our families that work in Lynchburg City Schools, our employers in Lynchburg City Schools, will also demonstrate some flexibility with their employees who are the parents and caregivers for our children, and offer opportunities for if they could telecommute at home and just be flexible with them so that our families do not feel that hardship.
On the off days, will the students be able to do learning online? Will they have teachers online to teach virtually, or will it be schoolwork that needs to be done and turned in a certain day? Do we have one of our instructional team leads that want to answer that question?
So we are working on what we call July logistics. So that teaching is done when they are online is all some logistics that we are working out through collaboration with our instructional technology department. And there's some things that still need to be determined as far as platforms to do that work. So we're working with our instructional technology department to assess and figure out how the virtual piece looks.
Will you please explain the logic behind using community centers and childcare instead of full 5-day instruction? This does not limit community contact, exposure, but likely increases it.
One of the challenges with having every student in the building every day is space, if we're going to maintain 6 feet safety for our students. So you can imagine an elementary school, let's say Darrington, with a limited number of classrooms. And if we have half the children, because of the 6 foot that we are trying to maintain for safety in those spaces, there really are no other spaces to put the other children safely and still provide instruction. So that's one of the reasons we look to perhaps there are some off-site spaces, community centers, and we can provide additional instruction there.
Will you be providing technology and hotspots for families who do not have computers, tablets, and/or internet so that children can continue their education during the 3 days they are not in school?
Regarding technology, our secondary students have all been issued Chromebooks prior to the COVID pandemic. Also, early on in the pandemic, we reached out to families in the elementary schools. Some of them reached out to us and requested Chromebooks for those in grades 3 through 5. So we are working on that as the needs arise. As we reach out to ask more information from our families, then we would ask that if someone needed a device, that they certainly let us know.
Was any consideration given to the mental health of our children? Dominique Foster?
So yes, consideration has been given as a top priority for the mental health and emotional needs of our students. We have reached out to our mental health agencies within our community. We also have put in some structures in place that we already had in place, but we're going to ramp those up that include some of our programs that we already have established for our students. So yes, mental health is a top priority in consideration for our students.
Did LCS consider the recent recommendation from AAP that stated their position that students need to return to school full-time in the fall?
Yes, there was a lot in the AAP recommendation, including stating that students could be 3 feet apart. And notice I'm focusing on students could be 3 feet apart if students wore face coverings. And with a 6-hour, 7-hour day, having students wear face coverings all day long, I know that was a concern of some parents. So we did consider that. We did weigh that information did come out this week. And I will say AAP, the P being pediatrics, talks about the COVID experience for children. But as I stated in the beginning of this press conference, we're an LCS family. There are adults that work with the children, so we also have to consider the safety of our staff as they engage with the children.
Will the assignments be graded? I will let, again, one of our learning teachers take the lead on this answer.
Yes, these assignments will be graded and they will be given feedback from teachers, whether it's a assignment that's done remotely or in class. They will be getting feedback and assignments will be graded.
Do you think the Go Center will still be around this school year?
Yes, we do still have plans to have the Go Center and students assigned to the Go Center, as well as Schools for Innovation, Bass Year-Round School, dual enrollment, Gov School, what am I forgetting? STEM Academy, all the special populations that Ms. Foster spoke about.
My biggest concern is that if a child or staff member comes to school with a fever and is sent home, are they requiring a COVID test to be performed before they can return?
So again, having the consult of our local health department, as well as having members in Lynchburg City Schools who are medical professionals and in our community, the guidance has been to self-quarantine if they do have a fever. And the test result may or may not determine their comeback date as much as just having that 14-day or 10 school days, if you look at it that way, quarantine period.
Can families switch between online only to in-school partway through the year, particularly when phase 3 begins? Dr. Edwards did mention this earlier in the conference, that what we will be looking at is a smooth transition. Right now, we do not have a definitive date of when that transition will occur, but we are working with our teachers, staff members, and administrators on when a date can be set for that transition. So yes, we will be looking at an opportunity for students to go from online back into the classroom when we switch through phase 3. How will registration work? Right now, we are encouraging our family members to register their children using the online registration tool. Please go to the LCS website where you can use the online registration. How will students in 6th through 12th grade receive their schedules?
Right now, as we are working with transportation about who is in cohort A and who is in cohort B, that is something part of the July logistics, and we will put that in the parking lot and get back with you.
Will this affect my high school credits?
As I said before, when I was up here, our counselors are working very hard to create schedules for students that really mimic what they would have regardless of if it's in-person learning or remote learning or a blended setting. It's very important to us that our students reach all of their requirements for graduation. We're going to do everything we can do to ensure that for every kid.
How do we sign our children up for this learning center? Right now, we are working through surveys, Google Forms to send out our information to families. We are highly encouraging you that when you do receive that information from Cindy Babb, that you fill it out as accurately as possible to give us a good indicator of who needs what services. When will parents know more about the Learning Center's 4 off days? As Ms. Ethel Reeves stated earlier, we are working with our community partners, our business alliance, our faith-based organizations to get that information out to our families as soon as possible. We understand that this is a time in which parents want to know answers and want to know them soon. And we encourage and ask for you to give us your support and time. We will be getting that information out to you as soon as possible. What will in-class distancing look like for teachers and students? Will it be mandatory to wear a mask all day or only within 3 feet interactions?
In terms of in-class distancing, looking like for teachers and students, what we're going to do, all schools are coming together right now in their own buildings and going through each classroom to see what it looks like to have all desks 6 feet apart. Within the classroom, teachers, while they're working with students, are going to be required to have masks on while they're working, as long as if they are within that 6 feet time frame. We are trying to make sure, and obviously leading with care, like Dr. Edwards said, to see if we're going to be asking kids to wear those and be mandatory for them to have them on all day. Again, we want to lead with care in that particular situation and make sure that we understand that we are working with children and we want to do what's best for them as well.
Will there be childcare at the community centers on Mondays or just the 2 days of remote learning? Again, something that we have not finalized. As we continue to work with our business partners, our community organizations, we will be adding that to our parking lot. How would it work for students going GovSchool?
Right now, we've worked with Governor's School, and so right now, and again, let's be very flexible, but right now, the plan that has been submitted is that they will go 1 day a week, which now has been designated as Fridays, to GovSchool.
When and where to sign up for an online program only. Part of the online program only is identifying what families want to take part in that. Once we have an indicator of your family's choice in doing online programming only, we will then be communicating with you via your school counseling office and administration to help you finalize that step. Will online learning be conducted by teachers and not like last semester's you're on your own portal?
So teachers will play a part in this online learning, and the students, when they're working from home, will have teachers that they're assigned to that will check in and provide feedback and have office hours type things. So it will be a teacher working with that student, not for the entirety of the work when they're at home or the remote work, but there will be an adult helping to check in.
Why is it that other localities can find ways to have K through third grade attend 5 days a week, but LCS can't? How will these kids continue to stay on grade level with only 2 days of education?
I'll take that one. All of us superintendents across the Commonwealth have struggled with ways to use all of our resources to ensure that we are providing instruction. One of our LCS specific challenges is with our transportation, as I said earlier, and making sure first and foremost that all students who absolutely need transportation to get to school have transportation to get to school. And as I said, it's flexible. And we want to start with that. So one of those first most important surveys that will come out is about your transportation needs. If the bulk of our students need transportation to get to school, which is how our plan has been built, that is where the 2 days of instruction in this early phase have come forward.
When can students turn in their library books and textbooks that they had during the past school year?
We have been asking for students to hold on to those items until we return to, which would now be our 2 day a week students coming into school. So for those students who are participating in the blended learning, they can certainly bring them back when we reopen school. If you are in an online model only, we'll have to work out ways for when we can safely take that drop off of textbooks and library books.
Will kids be sharing toys and supplies? Will they need to be cleaned after each use?
So the mitigation team has come up with some protocols that are going to be going on in classrooms. We are not going to be allowing students to share toys and supplies, and they will need to be cleaned after each use. And so our mitigation team is, again, working with what are those protocols that are going on with classrooms, with teachers, with staff, so that they know exactly how to clean and then also when to make sure that, again, we're keeping everybody safe in the classroom and in the building.
When and where will 3rd through 6th grade students get devices for learning?
So those devices are currently being ordered for students, and once we have an arrival date and a process for distribution, we will let students know. But we did put that in part of our city's CARES plan.
Is there a criteria for the students to get back to 5 days a week in school? If so, do you have a plan to work towards meeting those criteria?
So yes, as I stated earlier, we want to make sure that we're keeping our entire LCS family safe. And part of that plan is looking at, as we implement our 2 days a week cohort model, to monitor our cases, monitor our exposure, and make sure that we are at a minimal risk before we transition to adding more students. The 5 days a week plan, and again, transportation is a big part of getting all of our students to school 5 days a week. And part of that criteria is knowing the families that absolutely need transportation to get to school.
Will there be a discount for kids who need parking permits at the high school so that they are not taking up seats on the bus?
We actually just started talking about that yesterday. We think there's some value in incentivizing students driving themselves to school. We also don't want to encourage them to carpool with one another, but we think that we probably will have to do something in a financial way to incentivize our students driving themselves to school.
Is Lynchburg City Schools talking to employers in the area so that they will work with employees? The answer is yes. We have talked about in the conference earlier today, working with our Business Alliance, working with our partners in the community to know that we're in this together, that this is not just a Lynchburg City school situation or problem, but we're in this together and hope that everyone can come together for the benefit of our students. Will online learning be available for kindergartners, or will parents have to pick up learning material from their school?
There are plans to have online learning, but for those students who don't have the capability of getting online, there will also be materials that will be sent home with them from the days that they are in the building.
When will Lynchburg City Schools hold a town hall meeting to further address parent concerns, answer questions, and provide more practical details?
Throughout this process, we will continue using various modalities to engage, interact, similar to this one, get parents and caregivers questions and answer those things. So you can look forward to more of these types of interactions, more of focus group Zooms, things that we did last week and earlier this week. What we are discouraging at this time is a large town hall gathering in any of our buildings where we're asking folks to come out en masse. We are trying to practice social distancing, minimizing the risk for all. So we're trying to do these types of forums. You can always email us. Some of you have emailed me, call questions. Some folks had submitted some things to be read at our board meetings. And we are being as responsive to your questions that we can answer. We also have a parking lot, as was mentioned earlier, to get back to you with any information. And I think we're going to post a lot of this information on our website so that even if you couldn't participate, you can read and follow through.
Please explain why K through third are not going 5 days a week.
As has been discussed through a response with some of the earlier questions, K through 3 and pre-K through 3rd grade, we are giving preference to them, and 4th and 5th grade as well, to bring them back in phase 2 to increase that face-to-face learning with their teachers. And at this time, as we are monitoring the phases, when we move into various phases, we'll be paying attention to the opportunities to bring them back when it's safe to do so, and transportation is in line with that.
How are you legally going to provide IEP services to students with IEPs?
So legally, we are going to review the students' IEPs, and we will be in contact with families, with students with IEPs, to make sure accommodations and services are being met.
How can students get an IEP that already don't have one?
So students who do not already have an IEP, the parents may reach out to the student's teacher, and they can then go from there to have a child study meeting and initiate that process.
Will LCS provide support for LCS early intervention students attending private preschools that will be open prior to the proposed start date of August 24th?
So we will continue to work with our students who are in early intervention programs at our private preschools and daycares, or day schools, I should say, to provide the support that is necessary. I know that some of them have already reached out to our special education director to talk about those things. And again, with our preschool program, and we understand the value of early learning, we'll continue to work with the partnerships that we had established over the last couple years to make sure that we're all on the same page.
One accommodation on buses can be made for children who cannot wear a mask.
So that is a very difficult question, as face coverings, and I want to be clear that we're talking face coverings, are a necessary requirement for us to transport students if students are sitting one student per seat on the bus. If this is a question or a concern that a family member has, we ask that you contact us so that we can discuss your situation individually.
Will we need to take SOLs as usual?
So the assessment protocols, as you know, during the spring, they were canceled and delayed. There is a lot of conversation that is going on across the Commonwealth about both SOLs and accreditation. And as that information becomes finalized, we will share it with our families and our community.
Will there still be a registration day where students are introduced to their teachers? At this time, we are working heavily on our online registration. While we are being discouraged from having any large gatherings, that is in our parking lot, and have something that we will be discussing at a later date. If parents chose to do remote learning for 5 days instead of the 2 at school and 3 at home, could you consider setting a camera up in the classrooms for parents to follow instruction? Would one of our instructional leads like to take that? That is something that we're going to add to our parking lot as we work with our IT department and our leadership team to find alternative options for that consideration. Why did you choose to require a waiver for 4 and 5 to be paired with the K through 3?
When we were looking at the split of K to 3 and 4 to 5, we recognized that our 4th and 5th graders, along with our K through 3 students, are all very vulnerable in that early learning stage. And just for the consistency and cohesiveness of the elementary program and the elementary experience, we would like to keep all of our elementary students, although they're broken up in cohorts, together to maximize that learning and ensure that the students are getting what they need.
Will teachers be communicating with parents via Google Classroom or email to inform parents of progress or lack of progress? Yes, we definitely want to continue to keep our lines of communication open with our parents and our families, just like we've done in the spring and earlier in the year last year. We want to continue with that open dialogue of communication. Are you still going to do early college? Yes, emphatically, we are excited about early college, and that is something we're going to continue to do. What about theater? Will they be able to do live shows?
That's going to require right now a great deal of creativity for us to figure out how to make that happen. It's kind of a parking lot question for us right now, but if you know the high school theater directors, you will know that if it is at all possible, that is somehow going to happen.
Will middle school students switch classes like usual, or do they have to remain in one classroom?
We are working on the scheduling for middle school students to provide the best environment that will be the safest for students. So that is something we're working on again this July, about how a middle school schedule looks and how students will have to rotate throughout the building.
Will my elementary student be required to sit in their seat all day?
No. That would not be possible and would not be an enjoyable experience. We are ensuring that there will be recess and plenty of chances for movement, just done in a safe way. But yes, they will be moving and out of their seat.
What about students in nursing and cosmetology programs? How is that handled?
As these guys are saying, we're working on the schedules right now. But the way that we are working to block the high school schedule to keep children with seven academic periods, but dividing those into 2 days might give us the flexibility to sort of mimic what we already did by shuttling students back and forth, so that if we can work out the schedule so that a student is at Glass, a Heritage student is at Glass for 5th and 6th period, then maybe on their second day, they do their entire day at Glass. And then that would be for programs like cosmetology or the dental class, classes that require the room that the students are in to also be a part of the academic setting. For the nursing program, we think we can work it out so that our nursing instructor can go back and forth between the two schools.
When will you have the plan finalized with details specific families?
So before finalizing the plan, we have to administer a few more surveys to get that specificity for families, particularly interested in those who need transportation, requesting an online only option, and any other mitigating circumstances that we need to know. We obviously want to get the information out as soon as possible and not wait until August 24th to provide you with that. So as quickly as we can get surveys out, and as quickly as you as a family member or community member parent can complete that information and make sure that we're getting that from all of our families, that will help speed up our getting the plan finalized.
In classrooms, are students required to wear masks, especially if they have asthma?
Again, we are going to make sure that teachers are going to be wearing masks, especially within that 6 feet distancing. We're going to make sure too that, again, to make sure that kids feel safe in the classroom, person by person, to find out exactly what are the needs of those students. If they are not able to wear that mask, then we'll work on ways to make sure that they're able to be in the classroom and get the learning that they are supposed to be getting.
Will ROTC still have uniform days?
We actually included in the high school plan a pretty decent sized section specific to ROTC. And I know that the instructors of those classes have a plan for when they'll be able to start having uniform days. Obviously, it won't necessarily be when they're having remote days and kids are still at home. But once we get into the blended setting, they absolutely plan for that. And then obviously the on-site setting, they plan for uniform days during both of those phases.
Who will be staffing the off-site locations? What will the structure be there? Will it be divided up by ages? The off-site locations will be staffed by LCS employees. The structure we're still determining, and that would include, of course, the question regarding dividing it up by ages. Is there any sort of estimate for when schools will enter into phase 4?
At this point, we don't have an estimate of when schools will enter phase 4 or the guidance for phase 4 or beyond phase 3. I think the evaluation of how it goes during phase 2 and phase 3 will give us valuable information about phase 4.
If students are sick, fever, earache, strep, etc., are they required to be out of school for 14 days?
And that was one of the things that we discussed with the health department and obviously our medical professionals in understanding if students have a strep or an earache versus the symptoms that are COVID-related symptoms. So I think we're going to really do our due diligence to find out if the symptoms align with what are COVID-related symptoms through our questionnaires and our screening. And that will dictate the 14 days for things that are COVID-related symptoms.
Will secondary students switch classes during the day? Will there be an implementation of 90-minute core classes?
So what we're working on right now is sort of a 7-period modified block, really an 8-period because we're adding in a period for sort of a homeroom base, but also extending that on its second day to a full class period of like a enrichment, study hall, remediation, that kind of thing. So not 90 minutes for core classes. We're looking at anywhere from 60 to 75 minutes per class. And let's see, what was the second part of that? Switching classes. That one is getting complicated. We're trying to minimize movement as much as possible. So both high schools are talking about things like the possibility of putting the bulk of the freshmen in one area of the building and the bulk of the sophomores in one area of the building and that kind of thing. And just to minimize movement and also having building procedures sort of dictate some of that. So some one-way traffic, some stairwells that are only used to go up and some that are used to go down, and assigning of restrooms and things like that. But those things are still very much a part of the logistics process that we're working out.
Can AP students take virtual Virginia AP classes for all AP classes?
I think CNI is still working on that, but it is our intention to offer AP classes certainly in person and blended as possible. But as far as the online options go, I think anything in the program of studies, we're hoping to make that possible for students regardless of the setting. So if a student chooses to take only online classes, I think the same things that students would be allowed to take as an AP course in person would be available to them.
How will practice for sports and extracurricular happen if we have to keep the two cohorts separate?
That is still in kind of the figuring out phase as well. The phase 3 guidance from BHSL is currently in review with the Virginia Department of Health. So as we get more guidance from the BHSL, then we'll be able to figure out what happens when we return back to the partial days.
How do we opt out of contact tracing?
So we are working with our local health department to do the contact tracing, and you can imagine how important that is for our staff and students to stay safe. But I will say something about contact tracing and its specificity in terms of the distance that you were within someone who either tested positive for COVID or showed symptoms of COVID is going to be really important. The duration, and I mean consecutive time, being like 15 minutes or more, that you were within 6 feet or less of that person. And then, of course, the timing for where they may have started symptoms 2 days prior to they reporting having symptoms or sometime in that period after testing positive. So I don't want folks to think contact tracing is, oh, I was in the building, so now I'm part of a contact tracing. It really is trying to minimize the amount of contact that you had based on time, proximity, and the timing with regard to when the person showed symptoms.
What is the protocol for students who come down with an illness during the school year? Will they be required to show a negative test before returning?
So most of, as I mentioned before, most of the guidance that we have been given has not so much focused on the actual testing to return to school as much as the time for quarantine for as someone who may have showed COVID-like symptoms. And I noticed the question just said an illness. So we will treat seasonal allergies as we've treated seasonal allergies. We recognize that folks will have that. But for COVID specific responses, we are not relying on a negative test or testing as much as we are relying on time and self-quarantine.
Will there be an orchestra for Sandusky Middle School and Heritage High School?
We're definitely trying to make sure that we put all protocols in place to make sure that we have orchestra. We are getting some guidelines on how to do that. We will definitely put that in the parking lot, but those are in the works to try to figure that out.
How is band working? How is the mask requirement going to affect band students? That is a great question.
It's a little difficult to play a trumpet with a mask on or face covering on. And you can imagine any of the activities that require some abdominal expression or where you have to use a lot of air, such as singing or playing an instrument, a wind instrument, or any of the instruments in the brass family that have the spit valves and things like that. Some of the guidance for working with students who do play instruments is, being outside while it's nice outside, 10 feet of distance, because we are at an added risk when you're looking at the virus being transmitted through droplets and things like that. But again, we have some of the most creative music teachers in Lynchburg City Schools who are working to figure out how do we still give you that music experience here.
What accountability is being made to ensure kids are still in school remotely? Are kids logging into a Zoom session for class or attendance?
So unlike the spring, again, there's an accountability in terms of the workload and making sure that students are actually doing and submitting the work. There will be contact, there will be attendance, touching bases with your teachers, as well as the in-person instruction. So to my students out there, yes, we will be checking in, checking on you, making sure that you're doing everything that you would be doing if you were sitting right in front of us.
We have exactly 4 weeks until 10-month employees begin work. Do we need to establish childcare ourselves, August 4th through 24th, or will it be provided to us? Excellent question. And like our students, the most valuable treasures here at LCS, we also take into account our staff members, and we are doing everything we can to make sure that we adequately take care of our staff members in childcare. Currently, we are looking at childcare for grade age students, which are grades 3 through 12, but we will be adding that to our parking lot as well. Are there any epidemiological criteria tied to phasing? So far, this conversation ignores the pandemic.
I'm not sure that I understand the question, as we have stated that we have really spoken with and are in constant consultation with our medical professionals, including a very nice conversation with Dr. Gately yesterday on making sure, and when I talked about the education of the community needs to understand viral transmission and how viruses are transmitted from person to person, which is the epidemiology part of the pandemic. So it is not being ignored. It is actually being factored into the fact that we are trying to maintain that 6 feet, keeping the face coverings on to minimize the risk.
Will 21st century programming be taking place?
So at this time, the division is trying to make sure that we're following all protocols in place for 21st century. We are trying to make sure that that is a part of the lives of our children. We're just trying to make sure all protocols are in place. So the same thing that we do during the regular school day, making sure we do that during the 21st century program.
Will students who are quarantined be able to do the online version of the class? We will be sure to add that question to our parking lot, as we want to make sure that the safety of our students is the priority. And while you are home, and if you have to be quarantined, we want to make sure that you're receiving adequate care, but also the education that you so deserve, okay? Student schedules are a huge task to complete. Before finalizing schedules, would it be possible for senior students to request changing a current class assignment before school begins?
Our counselors right now are using the course requests that students put in last year right now to decide what classes they're going to land in. So I would advise you, rising seniors, that if you are unhappy with the choices that you made before we went out for the closure, you definitely need to contact your counselor and make that change now. What we're hoping to do is get a schedule in place and really kind of leave it there. We don't, we're not going to be able to have a lot of flexibility with switching electives and things like that once we get too far into the school year.
How will practice for sports extracurricular happen if we have to keep the two cohorts separate? It doesn't work to keep the cohorts separate if they are all going to be together at practice. Jen just spoke to this in a previous question, and we are working with our Virginia High School League to address that concern. What about staff who have asthma and have trouble breathing through a mask for 7 hours a day?
So one of the things that we want to make sure that our staff understand, that if you have something specific to you that you would like to discuss, to reach out to your building administrator along with the HR director to discuss your specific concerns. We are handling those on a case-by-case basis.
Why are you not closed Wednesday for cleaning between groups instead of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday schedule?
And I believe that question came up last night. And we toyed with close on Fridays, close on Wednesdays. It's in the middle of the week, close on Mondays. And what we tried to do was look at the school schedule and look at the natural holidays such as Labor Day, Memorial Day, which falls on a Monday. And we wanted to make sure students who were in the Monday, Tuesday program did not receive less instructional days than any other students. So we opted, because there are several holidays on a Monday, to use Monday as our cleaning day.
Will parents be allowed in the school?
So at this time, the recommendation from the mitigation team is that if you are coming to pick up your child, to be able to come in and pick up your child, but to make sure that everyone is safe, we want to lower the amount of visitors as much as we possibly can. So if you're just coming in, I want to sit with my kid, I want to have lunch with the student, then we are going to try to stay away from that. But in terms of just coming to pick up a child, if they need to leave, then we're trying to put protocols in place to make sure everyone in the building is safe.
Has any thought been given to a later startup to be better prepared?
Absolutely. One of the hardest decisions we had to make is about opening and returning to face-to-face instruction. And considering the students and their learning loss, social emotional learning from being away, and also balancing that with opening later, considering parents' work schedules. There were a lot of things that went into the discussion about when to start school, and teacher prep time and planning and preparation were also considered. And that's where we landed with, let's open school on August 24th. Let's start small with our pre-K through 5 students, 2 days a week, 2 cohorts, and then bring in the secondary students so that we can do it in a well-planned, efficient manner.
In the interest of time, we do want to encourage you that if your question is not asked or answered today, to please reach out to us to get those answers for your needs. We're going to spend another 10 minutes on questions, and then we will be wrapping things up. How will staff be able to maintain social distance from children with several medical needs, such as tube feeding, changing, assistance in the bathroom, and feeding, hand-over-hand instruction?
So that's a great question. That question will go into the parking lot, but I can say our team, a lot of great people on the team, trying to put those plans together, reaching out to different staff members to make sure we know exactly what is going on in classrooms and making sure we provide, again, protocols on how to do this in the best way possible.
How will buses be cleaned between drop-off and pickup? Who will be cleaning the buses?
So we have misting machines that we can use to clean the buses between dropping students off and picking up the next group of students. And as I said, COVID is a community concern. So as LCS, we as the LCS community will be responsible for all of the mitigation and cleaning where we can. So it is going to require that our staff do a little bit more and go above and beyond. Our transportation department will be working with how to, particularly in between runs, what is the best way to take that break after we drop the students off from school and get the buses clean and get them up and running. But it will be a team effort, as our children are that important to us. So everybody at LCS will be working as a team.
What about air quality in the buildings? The classroom get hot in the summer and cold in the winter, which tells me the HVAC systems are not working very well. Will you be doing anything to improve air circulation in the buildings?
That is a great question for whether it's COVID or not, and we are continually working on our HVAC systems in our buildings. And actually, one of those things with the chiller in Dunbar, and I don't remember the other school from last night, were on the board agenda so that we can stay on top of maintaining good air circulation in our building.
How are the staff, teachers of middle and high school held accountable for working the same hours as elementary school staff?
Not sure that I understand the question. I'm assuming they mean during the time that elementary students and staff are doing face-to-face learning from August 24th until the time that the middle and high school students come in on September 8th. And please note that during that 2-week period, that middle and high school students are receiving an online instruction program, and the online instruction program is being delivered by middle and high school staff. So I think that would answer the question about accountability.
What is the best way to provide parent feedback on the draft plan and provide alternative suggestions? Again, we will be having our draft plan posted on the LCS website. As we send out more correspondence and information through surveys, we are asking that parents fill that out and offer their suggestions. Is there a possibility that this plan will change prior to August 24th, given the statistics show that positive virus cases are on a downward trend?
At this point, we are still going forward with our August 24th plan, especially as we wait to collect data from our transportation department, data from our families about their need for transportation, who wants a totally online class. So there are a lot of factors in addition to the virus cases that factor into our plan to safely transport all of our students to school.
Will the school cafeteria be open to students to eat lunch?
Our school nutrition team is meeting with each principal and going through the buildings to determine the best setup to service students within that building. It could look like some students eating in the cafeteria, could be kiosk, pick up food stations. It will be dependent on safety, space, and such at each building location.
How will driver's education class time requirements be met?
I just spoke to the driver's ed teacher yesterday, and I know we've already gotten approval for the behind the wheel part of the training, and we're easily able to meet the accompanying class time instruction regardless of the setting that we're in. So we're not going to have any trouble meeting the required seat hours.
How will students get their yearbooks? How will the high school students that didn't have yearbooks ready get them?
I'm not 100% certain about this yet, but I think that we will use a system similar to what we used for seniors dropping off things and picking up things just before graduation. So we'll reach out to you and let you know when those are in and how we're going to do that.
Will there be orientation day for pre-K and kindergarten, 6th and 9th grade students? We are working, and Danny Rule is going to come on up and tell you what ideas we have going on.
Again, we're looking at virtual options to introduce our 6th grade students to their teachers. We're fortunate this past year to have all 6th grade students, rising 6th grade students, already in the building due to a program we had at the school. So thank you.
This concludes the Q&A portion of our press conference. We want to thank you again for those questions that were asked. If you feel as if your question was not answered, we encourage you to reach out to us on our website or through email. At this time, Dr. Edwards will give us our concluding remarks.
So thank you. First, I'd like to thank my team here. Ready and willing was our theme for last year, and you certainly have shown that we were ready and willing to deal with COVID-19. I'd like to thank the board for their support, knowing that this is a very challenging and very difficult time for all of us, but safety of all of our LCS family is first and foremost. Community members, family members, caregivers, I cannot thank you enough. I understand again that this is a very difficult and challenging time, and we all want the same thing, which is to maximize the educational experience for our young people, and we will get there. But I do thank you for your patience. I will say that this is not the end. We are not done. And as I started, we're trying our best to be as flexible and reflective and looking at our practice and using the information that is available to us at that time. Please continue to reach out to us, email us. We will have more opportunities through surveys and additional events like this to stay in contact with you and for you to stay in contact with us. So again, thank you for your time today.